Welcome to Living with Dr. Monica Shah, where we discuss different ways of living our lives and finding fulfillment in a world that often pushes a single version of success, timeline, and identity. Living fully means honoring your truth, and charting our own path on a road less traveled can feel hard. Whether you've chosen a non-traditional life or life chose it for you, this show is here to support your journey and remind you that you're not alone. Hannah Kissel is an executive life and career coach and former tech sales leader who helps ambitious professionals overcome self-doubt, burnout, and people-pleasing. I was part of Hannah's group coaching program last year to help me move through some blocks that were holding me back from my goals. The group was made of wonderful, ambitious women from all over the world, coming together each week to support each other, all led by Hannah. The group was part of my journey towards starting this podcast, and I knew Hannah would be great for the podcast because she personally knows both the struggle and the joy of shifting towards a life that's more aligned with yourself. After building a successful corporate career, Hannah made the life-altering shift towards starting her own coaching business. She now works with individuals and organizations globally through coaching programs, workshops, and keynotes focused on confidence, boundaries, and sustainable high performance. She is the host of the Big Fucking Dreams podcast, where she explores ambition, identity, and what it takes to build a meaningful career without burning out. Our conversation covers Hannah's shift from corporate to coaching and what she learned, an interesting discussion on purpose and purpose anxiety, and how to move towards your ideal life in the day-to-day. I hope you enjoy it. So Hannah led a professional and personal coaching program that I was a part of last year, and it was geared towards helping high-achieving women move through self-doubt and move towards their ideal life. And actually, one of the main areas that I was looking for help with was starting this podcast. And so this is really a full circle moment to have Hannah here. And Hannah, you have had your own journey of making big shifts in your personal and professional life. And so it was both full circle and perfect to have you as a guest on the podcast.
Thanks, Monica. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to just see you doing this as well. Like you said, the type of work that I do of helping people realize what they want in their lives, what comes from their true self, not just what society thinks that they should do or dictates what they should do, or parental pressure, sibling pressure from a partner. It's like, what do you actually truly want? And so being here with you and seeing you go after what you truly want and building this podcast, which is a very similar vein as well, about having people not take the prescribed path. So it's really an honor to be here.
Yes. No, thank you so much for everything and also for being here. So I'm wondering if you can start by sharing a little bit about your journey and what led you to your own big shifts in your life.
Yeah. So I'm Hannah Kissel. Like Monica said, I'm an executive life coach. I grew up in LA. I came from a family of lawyers. I would say both achievement and addiction were very rife in my family in different areas. I quite early on realized that the more I achieved in life, the more recognition I got. I often confused achievement for love. That led me to a really prosperous career in tech sales. I worked at LinkedIn for 7 years, both in New York and in Sydney, traveled the world. I was very high performing. I led teams. And then at 30, I would say I had, a breakthrough, whatever you want to call it, an awakening of sorts where I completely burned out to the point that my doctors said, if you don't take your health seriously, you may never work again. And from there, that caused me to go on just a really big journey of introspection around, what career meant to me, what achievement meant to me. Why is it that I always kind of compulsively had to push harder and be the best? And, the disastrous health implications that that has had. And that led me to founding my own coaching business. As Monica said, I love working with ambitious professionals. I do work with men and women, but I tend to attract more women because I think that women want to do this type of work and really how they can overcome self-doubt and low confidence to build the lives and careers that they truly want, not what society dictates. Yeah, it's been a hell of a ride. I would say another big turning point for me as well. I'm nearly 9 years sober. And so I got sober at 27, a few years before I had that breakdown/breakthrough. And those are probably the two biggest catalyst events in my life that have really changed the trajectory of my life for the better. But that's not to say they didn't really involve a lot of pain. So it is like the hero's journey. There have been a lot of dark nights of the soul along the way.
Which often having moments like that can be what leads to breaking through, right? Yeah, you mentioned that women seem to be attracted to you and the work that you do. And I would joke with some of the group members like, "Oh, high achieving women with self-doubt." That's like all
Oh,
women who are
yeah.
who are achieving. I'm wondering in your work, do you notice any patterns in the clients that you see or some of the issues that you find they bring to you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got like a very clear personality type, which is typically, the underlying current, which I do think plagues us all, whether that's men, women, high achieving, whatever, is just the pervasive feeling that we're not good enough. And that then causes us to behave in certain ways, causes different coping mechanisms, whether that be shutting down, whether that be being aggressive, whether that be going after what you want at the cost of everything else. But that's kind of the undercurrent, which, depending on someone's self awareness, when someone's on a sales call with me, sometimes they'll bring that up, but sometimes that'll be quite a few layers deep. And then as well, I tend to attract people with a lot of people pleasing tendencies. Like self advocacy is usually non existent. That causes a lot of issues, whether that be in relationships. There's often a lot of resentment, but then also a lot of overgiving.
Hmm.
So people with pretty porous boundaries of like always being there for their friends, always being there for their family. They're like the go to, yet they've never told a friend what you said has hurt my feelings, or I didn't like it when you treated me that way.
Mm.
And they're kind of the one that's just always on call in relationships. Sometimes they will even be in dynamics where they get put down
Mm.
and they don't really know how to come out of that. Really, the journey that we go on is a little bit like action taking. I want people to take a lot of contrary action. So, what typically you would do in this situation, do the opposite. And that can be super challenging and difficult. I do a lot in groups. Like you said, you were in a group, and I love the group environment because sometimes we may have a lot of guilt and shame about doing things differently, about standing up for ourselves in a certain way. And if you have the group there supporting you, it's like a healthy form of reassurance where, the whole group is standing by you doing something so you know that you can do it too. But yeah, the big patterns are the underlying doubt of never feeling good enough, high people pleasing, and a lot of ambition, usually in the career category.
Yeah, the group environment really it provides validation, right? I think even in the work that I do, there's something really unique and special about that group work. So one of the patterns that you mentioned was the one around not feeling good enough in some way. And that is definitely something I see as a pattern in the clients that I work with as well. Over many, many years, there are certain beliefs, underlying beliefs that people hold about themselves, about the world around them. And one of the big ones is that I am not enough in some way. And I've thought about how, in some ways, our society kind of conditions us to believe these things. So, from when we're in school and things are focused on grades and in terms of career and moving towards the next milestone, there's always this drive towards the next thing, the next thing. And I think within that, there's something that's created around I am not enough in some way. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that in the clients you've seen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, typically, like the pattern of I'm not enough, and then built on top of that for my particular client base is, and if I achieve, I will be enough.
Hmm.
And if I get this recognition, it's kind of like this false, this trap that is propped up also by capitalism, especially like you live in the US, I live in Australia. In these societies, innovation also is really, is like at the root cause of it, because the more you can innovate, the more money you can bring in, the more that you are worthy in the eyes of whoever. But what tends to happen is just an illusion, because I've coached very high achieving people in some
Mhm.
scenarios, and you would look at their resume and you would think these people are amazing. And it's interesting. I do tend to coach a lot of very high performing salespeople, but I will be coaching the top people at these giant tech behemoths, and
Hmm.
they come to me saying the same thing. It doesn't matter that they're globally recognized in front of 15,000 people on stage as being the best, or as living into this value, or they're in like the top 1% of salespeople. It doesn't even matter. They're still like, yeah, but what about next quarter? And usually what just happens is the goalpost keeps moving. And it's like, okay, well, I was enough for this circumstance, but then something else will be on top of it. And, if I were to sit here and be like, yes, me as an enlightened coach, I've got it all figured out. But the thing is, I also don't. I think that I've kind of healed some of that stuff within me, but then it's still, I do think in some ways, like, is this the human condition? Because if we didn't have this, then we wouldn't have progress. So there's almost like a catch 22.
Yes.
But would we all be happier in a socialist society, like potentially as well? Like, I don't, like maybe we would be happier. But then again, there's also part of me that loves entrepreneurship. Like, there is a part of me that's wildly creative and likes to strive in a very healthy way. So when we talk about this system, I'm particularly talking about the system of, achievement, and that's being driven by the thought pattern of I'm not good enough, or the core belief. But how do you do it in a healthy way that
Yeah.
it isn't toxic to you? Because there can be toxic ambition and healthy ambition. And it's looking at how do you thrive in a way that doesn't come at the cost of your well-being.
Yeah, I resonate with that because I do, for me personally, I feel like I have a drive towards achieving, and that can be a value. That can be something that you do value in your life. But how do you do it without and if I don't achieve, I am not worthy? That's the part that I think is the cautionary part.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes to parental conditioning as well.
Mm,
What did your, parents directly or indirectly teach you? And I've spent a lot of years in therapy around this stuff, and today I kind of have a different view of it, and I do believe parents are doing the best with what they have. But usually if that thought pattern is there, somehow you were getting some sort of reinforcement, whether it was direct or indirect, of you have to achieve. When you achieve, you're really rewarded. Or in my case, I grew up with a family member who like really struggled with a lot of addiction. So I kind of learned at a very young age, okay, well, if I do really well at my dance competition, if I get really good grades, if I become, the editor of the literary magazine, or if I do kind of all of this stuff, then I get reinforcement. And
yeah.
then that kind of becomes a drug. And then in my case, like, I didn't regulate that at a younger age. I didn't resolve that. And that caused me to be so burned out at 30 years old, which
Mm,
isn't, there's no reason that a 30-year-old should be struggling with burnout, that they have to take a year of work off. They've only been working for, been in a professional context for eight or
right.
so years. So when it's unregulated and when it's not processed, that's when it can start to cause major repercussions.
Right. It's more of a buildup over time of a certain way of viewing yourself in the world and pressure that you're putting on yourself. So it's not a matter of the amount of time that you've been working. This has been a lifelong wait.
Yeah, it's kind of like complex trauma in a way. It's like complex ambition, where it's like a lot of these little moments over time, it's not one particular thing, but then the build up, the build up, the build up. And I've treated 4 clients with cancer, clients with autoimmune. And of course, I'm not saying that this is the cause of that, but when there's so much stress in the body can't cope. And then when people do have these major health scares, they then come to me and want to reorient their lives around what actually matters to them, not what they have been taught to care about.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your own path and how that's paralleled what you're talking about and, you being in the corporate sales world and then making this shift, which I'm sure was a process for you.
Yeah, a very difficult one, but I knew, initially I took a leave of absence from tech, and it was a 3-month leave of absence, and then it was a 6-month leave of absence, and I was managing a sales team. I had like an $8 million quota and was just like, um I can't do this anymore. And it was interesting because when I was looking at going back to the workforce and I had to, tell them what I wanted to do, I just had something inside of me that was like, it was almost like going back to tech and either being in a sales role or even transitioning to L&D. It was like, this isn't even an option. Entrepreneurship just seemed like it was the only way. And I had never really wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I just knew that I couldn't go back and be part of a tech bureaucracy. It was like soul destroying in a way.
Right.
And I knew that this is against what I had really wanted to put in the world and what I thought was important to me. And not that, I worked for LinkedIn. LinkedIn creates economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. It's a very noble mission. It was an amazing company in a lot of ways to work for. Yet I had to really like fight against everything that I knew. And even in conversations with my parents, my father was like, Hannah, what about all the Microsoft stock? Like
Yeah.
this, they're like, you have so much stock in Microsoft, you're going to keep getting more. LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft. And at that point, I had been promoted nearly every year. I was globally recognized. Like I had been getting a lot of reinforcement about how good of a job I was doing. And then I was considering leaving all of that. But, at that point, I think I had an undiagnosed autoimmune. I was struggling with my sobriety. I had a PTSD diagnosis as well that I was working through from childhood trauma. And the question was like, do I continue in this path, which is going to give me just a lot of clout and recognition and money and acceptance, like, oh, I work for this shiny company, I do sales, like people know what to make of that. So it was kind of like, do I do that? But it will be a complete betrayal of myself, of everything I know to be true about what I want and who I am. And it has been fucking hard as well. I was going from like,
Yeah.
a tech salary to all of a sudden being a life coach. And I didn't know the skills gap was so big in terms of entrepreneurship. Coaching has never been difficult for me. I've always coached quite easily. I got quite clients quite easily, but being an entrepreneur is something very different. All of a sudden I'm a copywriter. All of a sudden I'm building websites. All of a sudden I'm my own accountant. I'm like my own sales development representative. There was so much of that. And it still continues to be hard in a lot of ways. But I know that I'm not betraying myself. And I know that the work that I do, as represented by this call and what we're doing here today, and you and your journey on getting you to put these things out in the world and live a life that's true to you. And I really think that my work matters significantly. And I stand by that. And I can see people's lives completely changed. And I truly believe like I am here to do this type of work. I wasn't here to sell recruitment software to recruitment agencies. Like that's not my end right now. And it's been very challenging, but very rewarding at the same time and also very true.
Yeah, whenever we make a shift like that in our lives, there's a process of yourself questioning it. But then there's the people around you that are also questioning it. And so it can be hard to kind of develop what you're thinking and feeling with all of that around you. I'm wondering how you moved through that.
Yeah. I have an extremely supportive husband and he is also highly intelligent, like managed $1 billion P&Ls. Like I take his support and his opinion very seriously. And I don't want this to sound like I'm outsourcing my opinions to a man about how I view my career. Like that's not it at all. But there were definitely a lot of times where I did doubt, should I be on this? Should I just return back to tech? It's just so much easier to have a like salary and to just know my place in the world and to not figure this out. But my husband was really like, no, this is your path. This is what you're meant to do. I believe in you. And he's so brutal. Sometimes I'm like, have I gained a little weight? And he's like, yeah, you have. Like, he's not gonna sugarcoat shit for me. He's just not that type of person. And it was his belief and his support. And I do really think that if you're going to make big transitions that go against the grain, you need community. You
Mm,
can't, like, I couldn't do it alone. And I just don't think we're meant to do it alone. And even getting sober, I'm in a 12-step fellowship, have a sponsor. I sponsor women. I
mm,
have done it in community. I know that that's what really works for me. And it
mhm.
has been having people that support me. And I also did a business coaching program as well with all entrepreneurs and everyone else doing the same things that I'm doing. So I don't just feel like the only person that has made this huge transition and I'm all alone in the world and I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, no, there are people that can support you, that have come before you, that are doing better than you, that are doing worse than you.
Mhm.
And that you can sit there and you can share and you can collaborate and you can realize that you're not alone, whether that's even with partnership or a good coach or a community or 12-step fellowship, like finding that wherever you can. I wouldn't have been able to make these huge transitions if I didn't have that support system.
Yeah, and like you're saying, that support system, that community can come in different ways. It doesn't
Yeah.
be your family or your partner or even your friends. It could be people that you are connecting with online. It could be a coach that you connect with. It could be another type of group program.
Totally. I had no friends that were entrepreneurs. My father is a lawyer. My grandfather was a lawyer. My sister's a lawyer. My mother didn't quite have a big career while we were growing up. So I didn't have that to work through and I needed to find that. And that's why I also like in my business, love groups. And that's why I started group coaching is like my favorite thing to do because also I looked at so many different methods of transformation. And I truly believe one of the biggest, like one of the most insane transformations a person can go through is to be in active alcoholism and then
Mm,
to be a productive, healthy, thriving member of society.
yeah.
And I look at Alcoholics Anonymous and the structure of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's like you can transform, people follow a set of principles, they do these steps, they go to meetings, they're in community, they work with a sponsor. And I was like, well, this is a method that works so much for transformation. So, what can I take from that? And then I've applied those principles to other areas of my life. Anytime I want to walk through a massive change, it's like, okay, who's going to be in the community? Do I have a quote unquote sponsor, whether that be a coach, whether that be a mentor? Who can I really look at who's walked this path before me that can teach me how? But then also, how do I get a peer group? And I
Mm.
just kind of keep following that formula for any type of change I want to make.
Yeah, because there's a lot that can come up when you make big shifts, when you make any change in your life, really. There's a lot of
Totally.
stuff that comes up. There's a lot of beliefs or thoughts that you thought you've dealt with or you've moved through. I've noticed for myself, even just this last year, I mean, in the journey of starting this podcast, there were so many parts of me that I felt like were piping up. There's the self doubt part, even parts that in other areas of my life I have actually dealt with and coped with, like the self-criticism part. There's a lot that came up in that process, and I see similar patterns in clients or even friends that I speak to who are starting new things.
Yeah, there's always going to be self doubt. And when you talk about parts, for anyone that's listening, a lot of what I do and part of the process that Monica's done as well is internal family systems therapy, which is looking at all of these different parts of you, almost like sub personalities. And they have like these different identities. So there may be a part, like for me, I was shocked. I was like pretty at the top of my game. In corporate, I was at the top of my game. And then all of a sudden, I was a newbie who knew nothing. And then, the fear of not being good enough. So much of that came out again. And I was like, haven't I dealt with this? Like, what is all of this? This is not who I am or who I perceive myself to be. Like, this is something that I thought I had really resolved. So it's, that's why having a solid support structure when making any type of big transition is, in my perspective, it's a non-negotiable. It's vital give you some sort of stability and community. Another huge challenge was like isolation and loneliness of working on my own. So I was at home a lot, just on my laptop, not talking to anyone. I was so used to always having a team around me too. And I would, of course, I had group coaching calls and I had my partner, but he's like working and I had my therapist, my coach. I had so many places, but it was not being in that team. So I had to start going to a co-working space, finding more community that way. But then also just really financial fears, financial instability in entrepreneurship. That was a huge thing as well. Always having been an employee and then all of a sudden being fully responsible for what comes into my business. That was just a huge shock as well. It's been around 4 years, so my business is really stable now. But the beginning years, it was, I remember like some of the first couple of months, it was like, oh my God, I made $500 this month. Like, wow. And coming from, a very, very good salary before, I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to survive? And the real survival threat was coming in. And I had support and I had structure, but I would tell people like anyone that's going into entrepreneurship, really having that financial security is vastly important. Like, okay, if you had no income for a year, could you still stay afloat? Like, do you have a year, sometimes more, worth of supporting yourself? And that's not going to completely drain all of your life savings. That is really what you need. And of course, some businesses take off really quickly, but some businesses don't. So if you don't want to have that fight flight response, having that financial security as a backup is really important if you're making this type of transition.
Yeah, I was just thinking that even if the purpose of having that is to you feel like you have a safety net, we can't know what's going to happen. But just in order to calm some of those worries and concerns, that's why that safety net is helpful, right?
Yeah, so you know that you're gonna be okay no
Yeah.
matter what. And also so you're not taking work that you really don't want. And it's like, I don't want to either take on this client or take on this speaking engagement. And I think that my business is at a place now where I do turn a good amount of people away because their problem doesn't quite fit what I solve, or I don't think that they'll gel in the group environment, or maybe also the work would be better with a therapist. But if you're in a state of desperation where you need money, you might take those clients. And having that financial security gives you the freedom to say no to those things.
Yeah, you can be a lot more intentional and stick to vision for what you're moving towards. Because if you start to water it down in those ways because of fear of money, of the financial piece, then you're not really giving yourself the opportunity to actually try out what you have in your mind.
Yeah, you can be in more integrity
Yes.
with what you know to be true or what you really want to be true.
So, when we were in the group coaching program, we had a really interesting discussion on purpose. Purpose has become a bit of a buzzword these days, and a lot of people are very focused on what is my purpose. But then what's happened is there's been some purpose related anxiety that has also come up because people are searching for this big purpose that's going to guide their lives. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about your thoughts on purpose.
Yes, I have so many thoughts on purpose. And I think, like you said, there has been, especially among millennials, a really big shift toward understanding your purpose, toward wanting a clear purpose definition, for really knowing how it is that you are going to uniquely change the world. And I think that this is in part, I'm like, Simon Sinek is to blame for this. And, Simon Sinek's very famous TED Talks start with why, I think seem to spark really the purpose revolution. But what has happened is that people have really started to get a lot of anxiety around their purpose and around defining it. As you've said, purpose anxiety, which is a term I heard coined from Elizabeth Gilbert, which I absolutely loved. And when you're struggling with purpose anxiety, it's really not knowing how it is that you are going to change the world. But purpose tends to also, especially in millennials, be intertwined with career. And so many people come to me with this sort of purpose anxiety, saying like, I don't really know how or what is this huge impact I need to have. And they almost devalue the other aspects of their life that maybe aren't as big and aren't as grand. And
Mm.
I find that mothers usually have really big breakthroughs when I teach purpose because they either don't think that their children are their life's purpose, and there's a sense of guilt and shame around that
Mm.
because they feel like their whole lives should be defined by motherhood. So it can be really quite liberating to realize that I do love my children. I do get a lot of purpose, but it's not my whole life's purpose. And
Mm.
then also, I've seen mothers realize that being a mother is actually their life purpose, and they've had guilt and shame around that because they think it should be something more grand.
Yeah.
And then they can kind of release that. But
Mm.
something interesting about purpose is that we can have different purposes at different points in our lives. Right
Mm.
now, the purpose could be, my main life purpose is to build a business and to impact as many people as possible and to get them to return back to their true selves and build that inner
Mm.
confidence.
Yeah.
Versus in a few years, it could be to raise a child, and it could be to, really look at, do I have a child with a healthy attachment style who's regulated? Am I giving them the best shot to be a healthy human being in their life, whatever that is? And then in another few years, it could be that my purpose is to write fantasy novels. And there's almost like a rigidity that a lot of people feel, which is causing anxiousness in society.
Yeah.
And I think that people should really break free from that and
Mhm.
realize that you can shift and change. You don't have to be in an extremely permanent set of rules. There's this almost grandiosity that people feel like they should make this huge impact on the world. And it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And if we all changed the world would be chaos. Think about how many people are in this world. We can't all change the world. Some of us
Right.
just have to kind of be
Yeah.
little like worker bees on the assembly line or whatever it is. We're not all meant to. So releasing people from that expectation and from the weight of that expectation, I've found people get quite a sense of freedom when they realize, oh my God, I don't need to put so much pressure on myself to find this one
Mhm.
overarching thing that has to then change the trajectory of the human race.
Right. And it doesn't have to be career related and it doesn't have
Yes.
to be big. What we spoke about was that purpose can be found in smaller ways too, like more day to day ways. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing that people are kind of making it out to be.
Yeah, everyone associates purpose with macro,
Yeah.
right? Of like, how do I change the world? How do I change society in some sort of way versus how do I be a better friend? How
Mhm.
do I plant my own carrots? And that way I'm consuming food with
Right.
no pesticides. Like
Yeah.
it can be as big or as small as that, but being more community focused also tends to lead to more happiness as well
Mhm.
versus being more macro focused. I remember I was coaching one of my clients very early on and, quite high achieving man, very successful, had done a lot, also very athletic too, had done so many races and all of that, and came from a quite high achieving family with a lot of pressure. And he realized that his purpose was just to be a good friend and to make other people feel good. And it was just so simple. It was so focused on his direct community. Now, in saying that, you could want to change the world. Like, I have massive dreams and ambitions of impacting millions of people with the type of work that I do. And that I do believe is part of my purpose. So if that's genuine to who you are, then go for it. But I
Yeah.
just want people to, if that's not who they are, and they realize that maybe their purpose can be quite close to them in different ways. It can be with their direct community, it can be showing up really present, being a good sister
Mhm.
after one of your siblings has had a child or is going through a health issue, really showing up for your friends and family. That is 100% a meaningful, impactful life's purpose.
Yeah, it's all wonderful. It's all purposeful. There doesn't have to be any definition for it. And I think that's the message that needs to be communicated along with finding your purpose because it's so individual. It's so personal. And it's funny how it's like we've taken the purpose conversation and turned it into this like, it has to be career related. It has to be about achievement. It has to be about, this outcome when it really can be just about the simple day to day kinds of things that are linked to your values and give you personally a sense of purpose.
Yeah, and women, women often get the short end of the stick with this. Like, you all of a sudden have to have this big ambition, life purpose, be super career driven, and be raising a family. Like, it's disproportionately a lot to put on women because I don't believe that we yet have the societal constructs that benefit two working parents, which in most families, given the income right now, the average income, most families need two working parents. And
Mhm.
so then all of a sudden, there's so much pressure of finding this big career purpose while then also having to get your kids out the door in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's, if people could just give themselves a break a little bit and think you don't have to change the world today.
Right. Yeah. If the purpose conversation is feeling like it's adding weight and pressure to your life,
Yeah.
then, it's probably not the direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't what we need to be doing and just letting yourself off the hook for it.
Yeah, another conversation we had in the group was around building your ideal life, right? And that's kind of this purpose conversation leads into that because your ideal life can really be anything as well. It doesn't have to be grand. It can be quite natural and day to day. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my favorite exercises. So I do this at the start of every single group and I walk everyone through a meditation of a perfectly ordinary day in your ideal life. And this isn't anything grandiose, but what does this day look like? And without a doubt, everyone's day always is very spacious. No one's ever rushing. And it could be something like I'm waking up in the mountains, or I'm working from home all day, or I'm going to an office to collaborate, or I'm wearing Birkenstocks all day, or I'm wearing my jogging outfit all day. People's ideal lives have been quite varied. But I've never heard anyone in this exercise speak about money. Maybe like one or two it comes up, but it's never like I closed $100,000 deal or I closed $1 million deal or all this cash
Right.
came into my
Yeah.
bank account or whatever it is. It was like I'm waking up in a light filled house or I'm moving really slowly. I'm enjoying my coffee. I'm maybe having a beautiful chat with a friend. I'm sitting by the fire with a loved one. It's
Mhm.
always slow, it's always spacious, it's never geared toward achievement. I really believe that's our true essence that then gets convoluted in certain ways. And what's really cool is that I've been doing this work for a while now, and I have started to say to people, send me an email or call me when your ideal life happens. Like when this ideal day happens, give me a call. And people have started calling me. Or I've reached out to clients to be like, how are you doing? I had two clients a few weeks ago being like, I've been meaning to call you. Like my ideal day happened.
Oh,
And it's so beautiful. I didn't realize people have a lot of awakenings when we get quiet and allow ourselves, the space to think about what we want. But undoubtedly, certain parts come up, certain parts will flare and they'll say, you can't really get that. Or
mm,
that's not realistic. That's not possible. Or yeah, okay, but what about the mortgage? And it's learning how to
right.
that ideal day is then usually an insight to what are the parts present that then we need to understand and work through and
Mm.
deactivate to allow our ideal day to happen.
What have been some joys that you have experienced through making this shift into more of your ideal life?
Yeah, oh, so many. I didn't speak about this, but when I was when I was in burnout recovery, I got a master's in creative writing, which is like
Mm.
very me. I studied English at school and I remember I wanted to get my MFA right when I graduated. I remember telling my dad and he was like, "What? You're going to like go get a degree in creative writing? No, you're going to like get a fucking job. Like what are you talking about?"
Right.
And I remember that desire. I've always wanted to write books. Like that has just been in me. I wrote a manuscript when I was a teenager. And in this journey, I went back to school for creative writing. I got my master's. I published a short story. I'm currently on, I think, the fifth or sixth draft of a novel I've been working on for around 4 years. And that I call it like my B job. Friday afternoons, I work on my novel. It's such a joy-filled activity to me. And I've always wanted to be a writer. having that part of my life and also realizing this is important. And it does eat into some of my business hours. This is a
Yeah.
non-revenue generating activity, and telling myself, but this is important to me. This is what I want to do. When I think about my ideal life, I am in a mountains home. I'm always in my writer's room looking out onto the mountains, like with some nice spiced chai tea. My little dog's there, a fireplace is on. It's always like autumn, and I'm there. My husband's off to work, and then I'm just there for the day writing in our mountains home. And there
Yeah.
have been moments where, yeah, this past year I went to different tiny homes in New South Wales and I worked on my novel. It was coming true, my ideal life. The crazy thing about it is I realized that I actually have my ideal life. Like, I have like a coaching business. I'm very actively engaged in creative work. I'm very healthy, and I struggled with health issues for a really long time. So it's just like bit by bit coming back to myself of what I
Mm.
really know to be true. And it has been, of course, very, very hard at times, but I've kept moving toward it
Mm.
more and more versus away. And it's like, is every decision, a decision toward my ideal life, or is it away from it? And in your core, like what is right and what is wrong for you. We all usually have a strong internal compass, whether we want to admit it or not. That's
Mhm.
a different question.
Can you speak to that a little bit for you? What does that feel like, that internal compass?
Yeah, it's like a knowing, but sometimes, like, I've, struggled with addiction. I've struggled with alcoholism. I've struggled with also a lot of relational issues, relationship issues. I've been in really destructive relationships. So sometimes there have been times where I think I know what I want, or the addictive parts of me will
Mm.
pull me toward things. But then if I get calm and if I get quiet and I think, like, is this truly what I want, or what is really good for me in my essence? If I get really quiet, I typically know what are the paths to move forward. But that doesn't mean that different shiny things don't come in and distract
Mhm.
me. Like, my marriage with my husband, felt super calm, super steady, nothing I'd ever really experienced before. That
Mhm.
to me took a lot of getting used to. I had to do a lot of recalibrating around that because it wasn't very intense. It wasn't passionate. There were questions of, okay, what does a safe, steady relationship look like? But then when
Mhm.
I really got quiet, it's like, well, this is my ideal life. I want something beautiful and supportive. Do I need something that's quite erratic, even if it's more exciting? And parts of me do want that chaos, but it's
Mm.
coming back to, what we spoke about in the course, your self energy, which is like, when do you feel calm, courageous, compassionate? When do you feel settled? That's when you know that you're moving toward a life that's really in integrity with where you want to go.
Right, and sometimes that does require getting quiet, because if you're just
Yeah.
moving along in the flow of things, then it can be hard to sense it.
Yeah. And meditation, meditation works for some people. I'm a very big meditator. I do transcendental meditation, so 20 minutes twice a day. That to me is a method that works. Journaling works as well. Yoga, anything that can get you to slow down and not just be kind of going on to the next, on to the next.
Right. Well, Hannah, do you have any tips that you want to share with people who might be considering a shift or might just feel like what they're currently doing that doesn't really feel like a fit? That kind of inner knowing that you had?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest tip would be find community. And that, let's say if it's like, okay, that what you're doing isn't quite right in whatever way. Okay, can you find maybe a low pressure way to stress test doing something different? So
Yeah.
let's say you've always wanted to be a writer. Maybe it's not, enrolling in a master's degree course, but can you just take a short weekend course? And
Mhm.
can you get involved with people who will want to do really similar things? Like, finding the people that want to do what you're doing. Like, Monica, you were looking at starting your own podcast and was like, okay, well, here's a low pressure podcast course. Here's something that you can do quite easily and quite quickly. That is the one thing I will say, is to find community. And also, if you are someone that is highly ambitious and you're filled with a lot of self-doubt and you want to get closer to your ideal life and you're not quite living it right now, contact me, because then I can help you do that. Definitely. Like, if you fit within this client base. And Monica, I'll also give you just a link for a free course that anyone can take. And I call it the
Mm.
Career Confidence course. And it goes through what are the different parts of us that we have when we experience a lot of self-doubt, whether that be the people pleaser or the martyr or someone that overgives. How do we move past those parts to help
Yeah.
us be more confident in our life and career? So anyone can access that. I'm sure Monica can put that in the show notes.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the biggest hack is to find community and to pressure test something in a really low impact way. Like, don't necessarily dive into something right away, but it's like if you've always been interested in pottery, go take a little pottery class. There's no pressure here.
Right. It's the experimenting. Just try it.
Yeah.
Go out. It doesn't have to be, linked to a purpose or anything like that even. You're just trying things.
Yeah. Yeah. And also figure out what it is that brings you joy
Yeah.
and try to have more of that.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that like joy and fun often gets so overlooked in our culture
Mm.
as things that we really need for nourishment. And thinking about, I love going to concerts or I love seeing live music, but I never do it. Okay, like how can you make that more of a reality, whether that's in your budget or that's in your calendar? Like, what is a way that you can get more fun and more joy? Because that is going to move you closer to your ideal life if we think about then the energy you're going to be bringing to other things.
Right. Yeah. Doing things just for the sake of doing them, not
Yeah.
right. Not for an outcome, not for a product, but just for the process of doing the thing.
Yeah, for the process of enjoying something. My husband and I started swing dancing, and we're not trying to compete in swing dance. Like, we learned it for our wedding, but we now have this whole community every Tuesday. We still take private lessons just because it's such fun music. It's a skill. We
Yeah.
want to get good at it, but we're doing it just for joy. There's no outcome. It's just simply to have joy and lightness in our lives, and that
Mm.
has been one of the best parts of the last few years.
So, Hannah, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website is hannahkissel.com and I'm on Instagram, Hannah May Kissel, MAE, or I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the main, my main hang, but you can find me on LinkedIn at Hannah Kissel.
Thank you so much for doing this. This really was full circle.
It really was. And I'm also just so proud of you as your coach, seeing you do this and seeing you live more of your ideal life and being able to be part of it is something that's really special to me.
Thank you for being a part of it.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you for joining us on Living with Dr. Monica Shah, where we discuss different ways of living our lives and finding fulfillment in a world that often pushes one. I hope this series gives you more confidence in creating and living a life that fits you, not the mold. If you like what you heard and you're ready to feel seen, inspired, and supported in building your path, don't forget to hit subscribe. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and grow a community of people who are redefining what living means together. So please share and leave us a rating or review. You can also watch on our YouTube channel at Dr. Monica Shah and find episode notes and bonus content at www.drmonicashaw.com. Finally, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Monica Shah for more inspiration and resources. Until next time, keep living your unique life. Because no matter what path we're on, it's all just living, and there's more than one way to do it. I had something I wanted to ask you about. I'm like a little nervous.
It's all good. Yeah, yeah. You can edit it. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like a combo with you and me,
It's just a convo.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like I feel like you've been such a part of the journey. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Just a conversation. Just a conversation, Monica. There's that self-doubt coming in.
Yeah, yeah. It's fine. Just a little part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see.